Welcome to Inspiring Women in Audit, the only podcast celebrating the achievements and journeys of women in the internal audit industry. In each episode, we spotlight the extraordinary stories, insights, and expertise of these dynamic professionals. Our aim is to amplify their voices, inspiring a new generation of women auditors to share their knowledge, experiences, and unique perspectives. Remember to check our show notes for links to our social media channels and to subscribe to the Inspiring Women in Audit newsletter. This podcast is brought to you by 𝑰𝒐𝒊𝒏𝒈 𝾂𝒏𝒄𝒄 Limited, the audit communication experts, dedicated to transforming your audit reporting and your audit results through communication, optimization, and collaboration. Now, let's dive into this episode of Inspiring Women in Audit.
Welcome, everyone, to Inspiring Women in Audit, the podcast that is dedicated to empowering and uplifting women in the internal audit industry. By amplifying their voices, we aim to encourage women in the industry to share their knowledge, experiences, and unique perspectives. I'm your host, 𝒐𝒐, and I'm excited today to have Margaret-Ann Brooks as my guest today. Margaret, can I call you Margaret?
You can. Even Marg is fine.
Even Marg is fine. All right. Well, I'll stick to Margaret for the intro. Margaret is the Vice President and Chief Audit Officer at Cooperators Group in Canada. She joined Cooperators over 20 years ago as a Senior IT Auditor, rising to the role of AVP, Audit and Certification Services before moving into the business, playing a key role there in bringing about transformational change. Margaret rejoined Audit Services as the Chief Audit Officer in 2023. She holds a CISA designation and a C-RISC or CRISC designation, to name two of her many qualifications. And what I appreciate about Margaret is that she's recognized for building strong teams, for being very effective at relationship management, for mastering the art of influencing, and for being a strategic thinker. Margaret is passionate about mental health and helping others build resiliency. She's a mental health champion, so we'll talk about that a little bit later, within her organization, and has published a children's book, Grandpa's Butterfly, to help children deal with grief. So thank you for joining me today, Margaret, and welcome to the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
I know we're just going to have a great conversation. So you've been in audit services for 18 of the 20 years approximately that you've been at Cooperators. Can I ask you, what drew you to audit in the early days of your career? And maybe what do you love most about it?
Sure. So let's start with the early days, because that was a while ago. So I actually ended up in internal audit at Manulife. So out of university, my second job, I landed a role in IT at Manulife in Waterloo. So I had a boss at the time who found I was, let's say, overly inquisitive. I always wanted to know why this, why that. I was constantly digging, and I was, constantly finding issues, and I wanted to help get them fixed. And I went to a depth that no one else seemed to go to. And I was always constantly asking for more work. I wanted to be challenged more. I wanted to learn more beyond just what I was testing or the analysis I was doing. And he actually knew some people in audit at Manulife, and a role came up in IT audit. And he actually recommended to me, he said, I really think that your inquisitive nature and your skill set really align with what they're looking for. Really, it was actually sort of a tap on the shoulder by my boss at the time, who saw it in me and saw a match. And I took the opportunity, and here we are. I was in audit at Manulife for several years before coming to Cooperators.
Okay. And maybe, is there like one thing that you love most about auditing?
One thing. There's probably a couple things. I think it is the investigative part. It's the discovering all, you get to dig in deep and really, really understand what's going on. And it's a challenge because you have to do it quickly. And so there's that constant change. You're constantly learning new things, but you're also then able to connect dots in a way that other functions cannot. And internal audit itself is just plays that unique role in the organization. So you get to stand sort of in that tower and view, all the operations of the organization. And a company like Cooperators, we have a lot of companies within the group of companies. So we have just had this unique place in the company, and I feel that we do help to bring value and drive change. And so it aligns my skill set with opportunity for change, which I love to help drive. So I think it's just a perfect win-win for me personally.
And I think a lot of auditors appreciate that too. The perspective that audit has is quite different from being embedded within a department in the business, right? Yep. You get to see so much more. So you left audit for a little while, and then you came back as Chief Audit Officer in 2023. Can I ask you what drew you back?
So it was actually the opportunity to drive change in a team that I'd been a part of for so long. The previous VP was in the role for over 20 years.
Okay.
And so when I moved to our retail sales area, it was a secondment opportunity. It was only supposed to be temporary. And I had the opportunity to get into the secondment, either come back or stay and help lead transformational strategic change. And when I had the discussion with the VP at the time, he was fine with things the way they were, and he didn't feel there was a need to change audit. And I saw this opportunity for me to further enhance my skills and prove myself outside of audit. So I chose to stay in retail sales until the opportunity came when he chose to retire. And then now here I am, and I can make the changes in the team that I had co-led for many years, and now I was in the driver's seat. So yeah, that's why I came.
You can finally implement that vision that was kind of percolating around you.
Yeah, and actually, to be honest, my time in retail sales probably even changed how I go about making those changes. I learned a lot out there that can actually now be applied. So even had I stayed, and ultimately, if I had become the VP then and not left, I think it would have been different. So I think it was a positive win for both the team and myself.
Can we hone in on that for just a second? Is there maybe 1, 2, or 3 kind of learnings being outside of audit that you were able to bring back into audit?
Absolutely. Number one, it's understanding and having empathy for the business. How difficult it is to make day-to-day decisions as you're trying to drive strategic change, but you're also not only are you, and I know so many people who work in the first line can understand this, you're trying to drive strategic change at the same time you still have BAU or business as usual operations behind you. So you are you're trying to move this forward, but you're trying to maintain this, and you're in this constant balancing act. And I was actually overseeing advisor compensation, and we were trying to make strategic change to their compensation to align to the strategy of the organization. And I just learned the challenges you have when you are the first line of balancing risk and controls with just, I've got to make a decision today. So I just have that appreciation and empathy now for what they deal with. And while I was there, I actually requested that the audit team come and audit me. So I actually was audited during my 4 years outside of audit by who was now my own team. So I got to experience it from the other side as well. So I got to experience some of the pain that the auditees feel that I now have the opportunity to change.
That's interesting, because I was wondering that as you were speaking. I thought, I wonder if she was audited while she was outside the department. So that's fantastic. I think it's a super good perspective to have. I know when I was training in the banking system in Europe, we always had an auditee, it was called back then anyway, come in and speak to the group for about an hour and just give the perspective to all those auditors from across all those countries. Just give them a perspective of what it's like to be audited, what it's like to get that report into your email inbox and your first reactions, and what are you thinking and how are you processing all that information.
And it's funny you talk about report, and I know we're going to get to other questions about reporting. I was the recipient of the long report.
Well, for you, I bet that was a joy.
So I felt the pain on the audit side as well.
Yeah, well, but I think it's important because we don't see that as auditors are. Yeah, we don't. have that. We don't understand the impact of that. I mean, you want your report to resonate, but you want it to resonate in a good way. Well, I also wanted to dig into that, taking over the CAO role after someone who's been in it for such a long time, because I'm sure there are some folks out there listening to us who have aspirations to be a chief audit executive or a chief audit officer within their organizations or at another organization. Can you help us understand, like, maybe what the top challenge or challenges were in taking over a role like that?
Sure. So number one, I needed to make it very clear. So my predecessor was very well respected, and he and I are still very good friends. He was my boss for many, many, many years. And he was very good at what he did. But I also I want to drive change. I think we can be more innovative. We can be more effective in our communications. And it's not that what we were doing was wrong. We just need to enhance and move forward. So for me, I think something I've learned is I needed to pace my change. So as you can imagine, I had this vision over many, many years of all these things that I wanted to change. And it's hard to resist that temptation to want to change everything now. I'm here. I get to change it. So that can be overwhelming for a team.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn very quickly that even trying to talk to the team, some team members, about how excited I was for all this change that's coming, that became very overwhelming for some of them. It's like, oh my gosh, she's just going to change everything. Like, it's all moving. And my world that has been so constant is now suddenly going to shift significantly. So I learned that I had to step back and I had to listen. I had to listen to the team. I had to listen to my leaders. I had to say, okay, there is no choice about the fact that we're going to change. It's just at what pace we're going to change. So we sat back and I had one-on-ones with everyone on the team, and I talked about the reason why we need to change. We need to become more efficient in our own processes, but we also need to rebrand ourselves. And I think as a new CAE or CAO, when you take on a role like that, you have only so much time to sort of make your mark in terms of the type of change or the type of leader you're going to be in about bringing about change. So if you wait too long, right, sometimes people go, oh, you're, it's status quo. I think you have a window to start it and sort of create that culture on the team. So at the end of the day, I stepped back because it was really important for me to know that everyone on the team was going to be a part of the change. It's not a top-down only change. It's about everyone on the team being empowered to help drive the change and everyone having a voice in what we're doing. So that would be, the challenge.
I love that. And I saw that, but we'll come to that in a little bit. But I can see, your words in action, which I think is brilliant. I wanted to hone in for a second on your comment about rebranding. I guess I have two questions, but one is rebranding, and how do you approach that? Because obviously there are relationships that have been in place, and the relationships work a certain way for a very long time. So how do you kind of, I don't want to say jump in, but how do you jump in and kind of rebrand yourself in that kind of environment?
Again, I was very fortunate. So I had a very strong reputation within the organization prior to leaving audit, the first audit retail sales. So I was actually tapped on the shoulder for this comment by someone who was a VP outside of the business, who said, I've watched her work for years, and she is the person, I think, to lead strategic change. So I already sort of had the benefit of having this reputation of someone who was a strategic thinker, even while I was in audit the first time around, going, okay, so let's collaborate on how we can fix an issue, solve a problem, and on the advisory side when I would do consulting on projects. So I had this reputation. Then I went to the business, and I actually was able to prove, not only to myself, but management broadly in the company, that I can be one of them. I can help deliver strategic change. I can be a part of the organization in a different way other than just being an auditor, right? And I think also during my time there, I really tried to stress to people that I would joke about the fact that you can take the auditor out of audit, but you can't take audit out of me, right? So I would joke with them saying, yeah, I understand I'm now one of you, but I'm almost like this, not to use I guess, a sheep in wolf's clothing, because I'm like, no, wolf in sheep's clothing. I think I've got that wrong. You know what I'm saying? It's, you're always, deep down, you're an auditor. But the amazing thing I was able to show them is that audit skill set of constantly looking at risk, assessing risk, identify where a control could be put in place. I showed how that can actually be applied in a first-line function role, leadership role, right? Bringing about strategic change. So I think when I came back, I don't know, I think I was able to sort of bring my own brand with me. And I know that not everybody would be able to do that, but they were able to say, Ash, is she going to apply that same strategic thinking and her constant love of driving change to the audit function? And I actually think, in some ways, from some people, it was expected that I would.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, that it would be expected that you would do that, especially, just when someone is in a position for 20 years, it is generally seen as, if they're retiring, it's generally seen as a great time to add a breath of fresh air into what's happening. And I love that, once an auditor, you can take, I say once an auditor, always an auditor. Or, I used to say about myself, you can take the girl out of audit, but you can't take audit out of the girl. It's inherent. So I think you going into the business is a great lesson for them, in a sense, to see the value of like taking an auditor out of the department and actually moving them into the business, because they can add a lot of value there. Because auditing skills could be a superpower.
Yes. Oh, they are. I spent a lot of time there training even my own team on what are risks and controls. I would have education sessions with my own team saying it's everyone's responsibility to help mitigate risk and understand what that is to the organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just one last question about this topic. You were talking about pace, and if you don't do anything after a certain period, they're going to expect that the status quo is not going to change. So what does that period look like for anyone, again, listening, who kind of wants to be in an audit role? Is it like the 100-day thing? Take 100 days, or does it take 6 months? Or how did it work for you?
Yeah, I think it's hard to define a specific limit and go it by 100 days or 90 days, you better have done something or else. I think it's company and role specific. And I know my role was unique, and then I was from inside. But I think from the get-go, I was actually, I guess I was fortunate enough, literally my 4th day in the role, I was presenting to audit committee. I had to present Q1 results. So once I wrote my own report to audit committee. And so the 2nd day on the job, I had a call with the chair of the audit committee. Day 2. And
awesome.
Yep, just to prep for the committee I'm presenting to in 2 days. And right from the get-go, he said to me, can I ask you to please redesign our reporting? So right from the get-go, I was being asked to bring about change. So that was an easy do for me. I would say, though, I still say, again, bringing back to pace of change, for me, I did have a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And that plan was meeting, again, with every member of the team. Not just what isn't working, but what's working really well. Because I don't want to break things that people are working really well. Or I need to be able to explain why I'm going to break it. Because they're working well may just be, it's a comfort thing. It's actually not working well. It's just comfortable.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of talking, and then I talked to a lot. I met with more. I think I met with every executive vice president of the company. I met with a lot of VPs just to introduce myself if I didn't know them already. And if I did know them, it was almost to reintroduce myself in this role and what I was hoping to bring to the table. And also just hear any thoughts they had on how audit could be different. So yeah, that would be what, there's no steadfast rule. I think it's just a matter of what feels right to you, but I think you need to listen to key stakeholders, not only your team, but outside, and go, what is the lay of the land? Because often, I had spoken with the previous CAO, and again, his perspectives were one thing, but often it's not till you talk to the people that you really learn some things that maybe you didn't know.
And I love that. I'm all about audit communication. And I think the more frequently we communicate with people within the organization at your level, or, throughout the audit process, whatever perspective one has in the audit team, I think it's just absolutely critical to gather information, to listen, to hear what's important to them. And, when you hear on day 2, please redesign this report, that is an invitation for change. So speaking of an invitation to change, for full disclosure to everyone who is listening, I worked with Margaret and her team on their audit reporting over the last few months, and they now have a new template, and we did some training and some post-training activities that we typically do, but you had actually initiated that project before you reached out to me. So I'm wondering, again, maybe a little bit about the catalyst for change. Only share, of course, what you feel comfortable sharing publicly, and what your objectives for that project were, and how did you drive it forward?
Having spoken to management in my first few days, and again, also having been a receiver of an audit report within my time in retail sales, I knew how painful it was, not only in the report writing phase for both the audit team and the auditee, but also in the executive leadership, getting these 30-page reports. That's a lot to read in a day and age where we're used to getting things in sound bites. And so what may have served a purpose years ago is not... It meant we're not delivering our message in a way that's actually being consumed properly today. And that's on us. So that was one of the second year obstacles that I wanted to take on. So again, I started last year in May. And so the first year was the Audit Finance Committee redesign. So their reporting started, and some of that enhancement continues today. And then this year was one of the biggest things was tackling the audit report. So we had a few objectives. One was simplify the report design. Simplify. More effectively say more with less. So just because, you have, a 2-page issue does not mean you actually are getting your message across to the reader who has now just spent time reading 2 pages and really doesn't understand what they should be getting out of it. It was also ultimately to better communicate our findings and help the auditee understand why they should care. Because I often found in our write-ups, it got lost. And even though auditors, when you are so close to something, you lose that perspective that you know what you're writing. And so you just go, well, they should know because it's there. But it's not in a way that's easily consumable to them. And that is a lesson that I know I learned a lot in retail sales, because I was giving a lot of presentations within that part of our organization on the strategic change we were delivering, and I had to get my point across very quickly. So I learned that, it's in how you design your message. So those 2 things really was simplifying the report, say more with less, but then also to better communicate the findings to make sure that the auditee knew why they should care.
And I'm totally with you, of course.
Well, yes, and you were great help in getting us there. So we can talk more about that in a minute, I know. But I think you also want to know about sort of how I went about then starting the project. So Again, as I've referred to already, I'm about empowering people and making sure that the team themselves feel like they're part of any change that I'm wanting to bring about. So I identified 2 auditors on the team, one who came to us from another insurance company very recently, within the last year, and another one who's a very senior auditor on the team, but who's been here a long time. And I thought the 2 perspectives would be really good to put together. They're both senior auditors. They know the pain. One had this outside perspective and knew how another company did things, and also then knew what the pain points were with what they did as well. So we didn't want to necessarily, obviously, you don't want to take what someone else is doing. She spoke to me about some of the changes that they had tried to implement that didn't work. So we were able to take that into consideration as we were designing our template. So it was the 2 of them and myself, and I wanted to leave my AVPs dealing with, the operational and IT audit side of the house. So it's called, you continue our regular delivering our audit plan. I'm going to take these 2. And one of their projects, and it's a goal for them, we made it a bonusable goal for them, was to work with me to redesign the template. So I reached out. We reached out to several external sources, and I found myself on LinkedIn and looking around, and your name popped up. And so we decided to attend one of your webinars. And it was during that webinar that I had a few ahas. The main aha was when you made a statement about it's great to redesign your template, but make sure you teach the team how to write to it. And until that moment, I was just going on, we're changing the template. They're going to get it. All is good. And then I went, change management. Again, going back to the strategic change I helped bring about in retail sales. I thought, I need to help the team adapt to this change, and it's going to be better for everyone. So that's when we reached out to you, Tracy, and we worked together to then conduct the team training in Guelph.
Well, I'm really, number one, happy you attended the webinar, and that that it's all that matters to me is if that one thing resonates with that one person, then you've made a difference somewhere. So I appreciate that feedback.
Thank you.
And I, so you brought me in to talk to the 2 folks running the team, running the project. And, we had a few meetings, and, they did all the work. I was their sounding board. They were the creatives behind, and you've got a great new template.
Oh, I think we do. And again, it's their template. So I simply was I was the internal sounding board. It's called being the creative individuals, bring me ideas. And then what we did was we ultimately, once we settled on a couple of options, and that was the approach we decided on, we would take a few options to the rest of the audit management leadership team. And then we would discuss the pros and cons of the different options. And then, of course, we ultimately ended up with more of a blended version of a couple of the options, as you always do. So at the end of the day, I think we've ended up with a fantastic new template that we're excited about rolling out, that those 2 people who help lead are also really excited because it's their work.
Yeah. Being recognized for their hard work, I think, is a huge part of it.
Yeah, and you saw when you were there that the team applauded them. So it really is. They're feeling very positive about the change, and I think feeling just the fact that they were empowered to be a part of it has really helped to drive to a better outcome than I think had it just come from me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes a difference, and I think. As when I spoke about influencing in your introduction, I mean, it's about bringing people with you on the journey, painting a vision for them that then they can take some action on and take ownership for, be accountable for, but also through their work, be inspired themselves by you and the vision, but then turn around and inspire the others in the team with their work.
Yeah. No, it's been again, so far we haven't delivered it yet. We've got the 2 pilots going on right now. So the stakeholders outside of audit have not seen it yet.
Okay.
I'm excited to see what the response is.
Okay, because that was going to be my question is, where are you in the process, and have you gotten any feedback yet from stakeholders? So that's going to come in the future. Is there maybe one little secret sauce that you can share about the new reporting? Is there something you're doing that maybe others might benefit from hearing about?
So a couple of things, I think. So it's much more visual. So the report itself is trying to, we took a step back and at your direction as well, and we just considered the stakeholders. Who are those different stakeholders that receive our report? Why do they get the report, and what do they need to get out of it? So there's several different layers of management and also external parties, our external auditors, the regulators, who also see our reports. So realizing not everyone needs all the detail. So it's more like a layer. It's a layering effect. And what we've done is we've created some visuals that help you see how many action plans are there in this report down below, the severity of those action plans, how quickly management is going to be able to action those action plans, and then themes. So what are the themes that we observe throughout the audit that senior leaders, CEO and others should care about? And then the next layer down, you get it sort of an observation snapshot. Again, it's just, high-level summary of what are those audit findings, and then the issues themselves follow afterwards. So again, trying to meet the needs of several different stakeholders. The one thing I really like now, and I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from the auditors who are writing the 2 pilot reports, is how clear we are in terms of creating the boxes when you're writing an issue. So you now have your issue criteria, and they're separate from your risk and your cause. And it's creating those distinct boxes that actually have caused the auditors even to pause and collaborate more before they write. And I know you encourage that anyway. And we were doing that, but not to the same extent. They were collaborating, but not sort of all those 5 whys and really digging down. It was more just talking in a different way. They're all excited. They're finding they're having much more value-driven discussions that will help us end up with a better report. So I think, again, we're all on the learning curve here. We're certainly not going to, our audit reports, the first few aren't going to be, I'm sure, be as good as they will be in maybe a year or 2's time. That's why we're on a journey. It's all about, they say, right, the journey begins with 1 step, and we're taking a step.
The journey begins the day they walk out of training. And it really is a journey. And, the way you've set it up now, where you have split out cause and risk and those kinds of things, you may find one day that you don't need to split them out anymore because the team is so well trained that it's coming naturally and that everyone's doing it. But I kind of work on the philosophy of, if you build it, they will come. So when the team isn't familiar with actually incorporating some of these really crucial elements into their writing, that building it for them in a way where they do have the opportunity to focus and discuss and get clarity on those things can be really helpful. So,
yeah. And I think too, it's the fact that in many cases, they were there, but in a 2-page issue, even the reader didn't know, well, where am I going to find risk? Like, I've got to go through here and I've got to try to find it. Whereas now it's in its own distinct box going, okay, there's my risk.
And if I may, can I share something about the severity for your action plans? Because I don't see it very often. So I wanted to just put it out there for our listeners, is that most clients have a rating on the finding or the observation in total. You have ratings on each action because some actions are more important than others. And I find that so far in what I've seen out in the world, and that's a lot in 20 years of doing this, to be honest, thousands of reports and findings and dozens of companies, but you're the first one I've seen to actually rate the actions. And I think that's an interesting take. So hopefully that resonates with someone out there where they're wondering, is this kind of thing possible? It's absolutely possible. So thanks for sharing.
Well, that's fine. We just want on that. The reason we've done it, and then it was only maybe, I would say maybe 10, maybe 15 years ago. I've been here that long. And it was introduced because, again, it was helping to help management prioritize the action plans. You have so many. What am I supposed to do? We're trying to, if you can at least tackle these few, these are the high risk ones that you need to tackle first.
Yeah.
The other ones are more documentation. You need to update your documentation. That's down here.
Because normally what you see is when you have the rating on the whole findings, then every action related to that has that high level of importance, and maybe it's not warranted for every single line item related to it. So I find it very interesting. When I was there and we were planning for the reporting work that we did together, and we talked a lot about the culture at Cooperators, because my feeling as an outsider looking in is the culture of Cooperators is quite unique. There are some things about it that I think potentially we could all learn from, right? So I'm wondering how, if you could maybe just describe the culture a little bit and tell us what it means to your relationships and your reporting.
So again, it's in the name, but Cooperators is a cooperative, and we are therefore guided by cooperative principles and values. And there's a cooperative movement. It's global. It's not just us. We're a part of this cooperative movement. And it's not as well understood in North America as it is in Europe. So we'll just put it that way. And so key to the cooperative identity is the concept of democracy. It's who we are. We are a democratically structured organization. That's who we are. So we work collaboratively, and we're making sure that everyone has a voice, because that is democracy. The principle is one person, one vote. That's how a cooperative works, because again, it's member owned, right? And so when you work in this type of environment, it's important for audit to make sure that we work collaboratively with the auditee, and the auditee has a voice. So again, I know we talked about this. We have a management response section in our reports. Management has the ability to put their voice into the report. If they have something they want the reader to know from their perspective, that's their section. And again, we work very collaboratively together to try to find solutions, and realizing that at the end of the day, we're trying to ultimately serve the client, the cooperative policyholder. So, it's a win-win if we can find common solutions, knowing we're all trying at the end of the day to have this, we have single. So it's all about the cooperators. And we could talk about this more we'll be touching on these in some other further questions, but it's a culture that really cares about people inside the organization as employees, but also people outside the organization.
I feel like that comes across in the reporting far more than most of the clients that I work with. I mean, every corporation or every organization has its own culture, and the feeling radiating from you and from the team and from the reporting is an overall kind of positive, we're in this together and we're here to lift everyone. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that is it. Like we do try wherever possible to put positive information statements in the report to say, management is at least worked on this. We found all of these things, but yes, there actually is a positive. I know the standards do talk about that anyway. But we may do it more than most. It's just that is our culture, in terms of not always just highlighting what isn't working.
Yeah. But I think it works there. I think the reporting works well. I think the tone works there, and wanted to share that with everyone. So it may not resonate with some. Like some of the things we've talked about for reporting won't resonate with some, and it will resonate with others. And that's all fun.
Taking into account your stakeholders, right? And we're writing for our stakeholders and within our culture, and it has to speak to that. Yeah.
And I'd like to jump to a question about one more aspect at Cooperators, which is the mental health side of the business. So you've been trained as a mental health champion there, and I know we've talked about resiliency before. I'm talking, what does it mean to be a mental health champion? Kind of what's your role and responsibilities at Cooperators to do that?
So the mental health champion role was created, I would say, about 12 years ago. It's actually not it's not a formal role anymore within the organization itself. Those of us who were around long enough would recognize those of us who were trained to be it. It just speaks to the fact that Cooperators, I think, was ahead of the curve 12 years ago, long before the pandemic, long before a lot of attention, as much attention was being paid to mental health. Cooperators realized that people were struggling. And so they created a program for people to be sort of tapped on the shoulder to go and be trained as mental health champions, and that people would know who you are within the organization, and you were therefore someone that could be a safe place for them to talk to, and you would also be trained. So we spent at least a week being trained by the Canadian Mental Health Association. They brought them into the company, and they trained us on how to help people, how to help them find other help. And realizing I'm not a counselor myself, but there are things that you can help immediately, but then there's things you can help somebody longer term. That's morphed though now into other well-being initiatives throughout the organization. We now have a benefit where you have $5,000 a year benefit per person for mental health treatment. Like, that's how seriously this organization takes mental health. So again, I can't say enough about the commitment. My role officially doesn't really exist anymore, and I'm happy because it's actually morphed into other things, right? So it was the catalyst to get other things moving, and as anything, it evolves over time.
I think that many companies many workers, all of our employees could benefit from programs like that, because mental health is not something we see physically, but it's there in the background.
It's also not something that doesn't strike everyone. You have different phases of your life where things are just really hard. And I was tapped on the shoulder specifically by my boss at the time, because I had just gone through the death of my father, and I was now experiencing my mother with Alzheimer's. And he said, I know you yourself are dealing with a lot of life issues. And I had 3 young children. And he said, I really think you can empathize with people really well. And I think this would be something that you do well at. And so I jumped at the opportunity.
That is a perfect segue into this. I hope everyone can see this. This is your book. It's called Grandpa's Butterfly. And you've written that for young children. That's your target audience. And I wanted to ask you to share with us, if you will, what inspires you to write the book and what you hope to teach children with the book.
So it's hard to believe. I actually published that book now it's 8 years ago next month in November. And it was an idea that was sparked by my grandfather when I was 10. So he told me a story, essentially, that we're all, a butterfly eventually when we pass on. And years later, my grandfather unfortunately had passed away quite a long time ago. And I found myself having to deal with the death of my father, and then very quickly after that, the death of my grandmother, as well as the diagnosis of my mother with Alzheimer's. And so my children, I had 3 young children at the time, were really struggling with what all this meant. They were watching all of this happen to ones that they loved, and they were having a hard time processing it. So I found myself bringing this story from my childhood up, and I built on it and built on what my grandmother had told me, and I created a story, and I was telling my children this story. And eventually my husband said to me, he goes, you really need to write this. I really think you could help other children. I really think that it's something that hits so many families, and parents don't know how to deal with it. And it's not something we really want to talk about. So I wrote it. And again, I'm an auditor by nature. The fact that I've written a children's book, I published a children's book, just baffles some. One of my childhood best friends said, if anyone was going to publish a children's book, I never thought it would be you. And I completely agree with her, so I'm not insulted by her comment. The concept of the story is really in it. The grandpa, who ultimately has actually been drawn to be my dad, he's a childhood friend of mine, was my illustrator. So the grandpa is my dad. And the granddaughter in the book is actually drawn to be my daughter, Jamie. And really what he teaches her is we're all in our cocoon. We're caterpillars in a cocoon. And one day we will fly free. But it's up to us to determine how beautiful our butterfly is. And you can do that by how kind and loving you are to other people.
You're making me tear up just thinking about it, because I read it and I loved it. It wasn't a long read for an adult, but I cried. When I shared my thoughts for this discussion, I didn't include that. I cried when I read it. What I love most about it is that it can help us deal with grief, and maybe for some of us start the healing process. I know for me, I don't think I've dealt with the loss of my paternal grandmother. That was a lifetime ago, literally half a lifetime ago. And then I lost my uncle during COVID. He was in Toronto and I was in Germany. And so there are things I know that I haven't dealt with. So thank you for the gift of your book, even though I'm mostly all grown.
Well, there's also too, and I can always send it to you and you can distribute. However, there is also a coloring sheet that goes with the book. So people can either choose to color in their own, or they can color in the butterfly of someone they loved and lost. Yeah. So we were sitting by my mother's bedside while she was passing away. And it was only 2 months after I'd published the book. My family, it was over the course of 9 days. It was a long, hard time. We all talked about what her butterfly will look like. And we all talked about the different colors and what they meant. So my niece colored in my mom's butterfly. And when I gave my mother's eulogy at the end of it, and I'm going to tear up, I unveiled my mom's butterfly. And I explained what every color meant. So we have a physical vision now, this physical drawing of my mother's butterfly and who she is, what she looks like today.
It's just so powerful. And thank you so much for sharing that personal part of your story and for writing the book. I think it's magical. It's going to make a difference. So thank you. All right. Well, let's come back. Just 2 more questions for you, which I ask all of my amazing, inspiring women in audit guests. So the first one is, what advice would you give to women who want to rise into leadership within the internal audit profession?
So Sash, it's interesting. I saw this question. You kindly sent them to me ahead of time. Thank you. And this one took me longer to think about, because I wanted to make sure that it actually was, if I could sit back and talk to myself 10, 15 years ago, what would I say to me? And I also have a young daughter who's 26, starting out in her career. So it's called, what advice am I giving her? So number one, I would say believe in yourself. So as women, we tend to downplay our successes. We downplay some of the value that we bring. We sometimes remain quiet. Men don't seem to have the same challenge. We seem to be socialized this way. So number one, believe in yourself. Because if I can do it, you can do it. Listen to others, but also be willing to challenge and give yourself a voice. So yes, you have to listen and you take things in, but don't just sit passively back and go, okay, that's what they said, so I'm not to say anything. Especially in an audit role where it's ours to challenge, and especially in a CAO role, it's yours to challenge. So you need to find your voice. Build relationships and networks wherever you can. Auditing is so much about networks and relationships internally and externally, and find a network of strong women. Find a network of strong women. And I have some of those internally within the organization, and I find them, they're not hard to find. I mean, even connecting with you, right? It's called you're trying to uplift women. We're all out there. And the minute we start to band together, then it's going to be amazing the power that we have. And we already have that power, right? But also too, finally, my other, again, specifically to internal audit, is be prepared to leave audit and go into the business and challenge yourself. Understand the issues that management is dealing with so that you have empathy. I think it makes you a better auditor and audit leader to actually have that empathy for the challenges that they face every day. So
that's amazing advice. And I hope, by doing what I'm doing, there's contributing to that just a little bit by creating this inspiring women in audit community. We have the LinkedIn group now. At the time of this recording, we have over 300 amazing, inspiring women in audit from around the globe. And I just hope that we can grow that, because I think there is a need for women to have an ear that understands from their perspective, because I think it is a slightly different perspective. And it's not that others can't share in that perspective, but it's like an instant connection. You don't have to explain things.
I couldn't agree more, Hugh, because again, there are also two unique challenges in just being a woman, whether or not you're, dealing with aging parents or young children, whatever. We often also have to balance the caregiver role.
Yeah.
A lot of men don't. And again, you never really can fully leave your personal life outside of the office. You could be sitting there and all of a sudden you get a phone call, and this happened to me many times, about my mother or my father when they were ill, and then about, the children, and you also go, oh, by the way, but I've got to run into a meeting, right? And it's women, when you can empathize, because you've also lived that, it's different. And I think we can uplift each other in a different way.
And I think, too, the journeys that our bodies go through as we age is also a unique point. Just saying, don't anyone be offended by that. But yeah. Okay. Last question. Margaret, what legacy do you hope to leave in the field of internal audit, and what impact do you hope to have on future generations of auditors, especially women?
So this is a hard one. I think within the Cooperators, and then again through other associations, it's trying to drive innovative change within audit, because it's that rebranding of audit, and I'm hoping I leave the legacy that I'm helping to take audit, at least my own audit team, and be an example for others, taking us to that next level of storytelling, risk storytelling, but in a visually appealing way, and maybe tying in my book. Maybe I'm a storyteller and I didn't realize it. I don't know. I'm just having that aha at the moment while I'm speaking this. Again, it's more, I'm hoping to innovate how audit communicates and gets the perception of what we do. Hopefully it changes how management perceives us. right? We're constantly, even though we've been evolving over time, and in cooperators, audit is seen as a valuable business partner. We really are. But are we to the point where they're coming to us for foresight, as the standards now say? Not yet, right? But it's on us to communicate messages in a way that help them realize we should have a seat at the table, right? So I think, too, for me, I have this, I was encouraged years ago by a coach to write my personal manifesto. And I think I shared it with you. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But essentially, at the end of the day, my purpose in life is to actually help other people become the most beautiful butterfly that they can be. And that's, to use the analogy from my book. And to know that the power to make this happen lies within. It lies within each of us. It is there. You just have to be able to tap into it and be given the opportunity and believe in yourself. So I see myself as kind of like this vessel to help those other people do just that. And that is written in my personal manifesto. So that's
beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I thank you so much for sharing that. I really, sitting here, I just feel like you're just a good human, Margaret.
I try. It's on all of us. We're only here for a brief time.
It is, but it goes along, with the book and about being kind and loving and living that life, and then doing what we can. And even as auditors, even though we do something different by day, we can still embody those principles and beliefs as we go forward and make that contribution to our organizations and our colleagues and to our communities. So thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. It's been a real pleasure for me, and I am so honored that I could share you with the rest of the world, and that they will get to experience you as I have in the months that we've gotten to know each other. And so thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And again, thank you for helping us on our journey to arrive at what I'm hoping is seen and within the organization as, again, a transformational change for audit and an opportunity to rebrand who we are. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast. We'd love for you to stay part of our growing community, so subscribe wherever you're listening. If you're enjoying our content on platforms like iTunes or Spotify, a quick 5-star rating from you would mean the world to us. It's a small action that supports our mission immensely. Don't forget to explore the show notes for various links and join our vibrant community on all our social media platforms. Your interaction and support play a crucial role in amplifying the voices of inspiring women in audit and spreading their inspiring stories even further. Thank you for being a part of our journey, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast.